Muted. Okay, so we're unmuted now.
Yeah. Hey, Steve. How are you?
That was the funniest anecdote you've ever told. I'm so glad everyone got to hear it. That was amazing. The timing was perfect. I don't think
Oh
you could even repeat it if you tried.
no, that is internet gold. I mean, we're gonna win our first Webby for that.
Uh-huh.
If pat myself on the back on that one.
We were like, let's skip the musical intro. Let's go right into not talking.
Yeah, I've
So
got some, and not, that wisdom I imparted. Enjoyed people. It'll take you forever. Okay, so for those of you now listening, now that we are have audio on, real quick, Steve, you're drying out, correct?
I am drying out.
Okay.
No more alcohol for me. And
It is sober October.
but it was 8 days ago when the storm rolled through here, and my studio is finally habitable again. And but for folks who don't know, my name is Steve Conley. I'm a web cartoonist. I create the webcomic. I write and draw the webcomic, The Middle Age, which you can read on Webtoons, Tapas, Go Comics, and my own website. And I also create TTRPG content. The latest thing I'm working on is called Intoximancy, which you can check out at intoximancy.com. That's who I am. And who the hell are you, Dan?
I've been trying to figure that out for 54 years now. I am Dan Taylor, and I am what Steve often refers to me as, a professional dungeon master, though I am still.
It's a rarefied air.
It still makes me uncomfortable, but I'm going to talk a little bit about my professional dungeon mastering today. But no, I'm not going to say former comic book creator, because I do dabble in it still a little bit and maybe do it again. But my main focus now is on the RPGs, Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop role playing games. Because the comic book world is tough.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
New York City Comic Con is going on right now. It's the last day 4 right now. Have you ever done New York City?
No, not in its current incarnation. I did it back when it was like the Big Apple show and other versions of it back in the day, but not since Reed Pop came in and turned it into this monster.
Yeah, it's comparable to San Diego.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you there's finally a show that if you had a show, you could normally San Diego would be the show of the year, right? Might say Fan Expo, you might say Angoulême in other countries, but in the States it was like San Diego and that was it. And now if you said I'm skipping San Diego to do New York, people go, okay, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and you've got what's the 3 Cs or whatever in Chicago?
Oh sure, C2E2.
Yeah, and Emerald City's pretty good in Seattle right now.
That's what I've heard too.
Yeah, I've done plenty of Comic Cons in San Diego International. What's the official title? The International
Comic Con International.
Comic Con International, or we just call it San Diego.
Sure.
And let's see, back when Wizard had their shows.
Yep.
Before they were wrestling shows, when they were comic book shows,
it was a very brief window.
I did Chicago
Sure.
a few times.
Wizard World Chicago, which was the Chicago Comic Con, and then they bought it and then it was rebranded Wizard World Chicago, and then they realized the Wizard brand was on the outs, and they turned it back to the Chicago Comic Con, and then I think then Reed bought it, and it became C2E2, I believe. I think it did, or C2E2 moved in, and basically there was no reason to have the other show anymore.
The one show I do miss, though, my favorite show ever was Mid Ohio, before Wizards got their hands on it.
Good call. That's a good one. That was a good one.
I loved flying from California to Ohio on Thanksgiving Day is what I usually did, and I forget the gentleman's name who put it on, but he was the kindest soul.
Roger Price.
Yes, Roger Price. That was the very first show that we had Superhero Happy Hour.
Wow. What year was that?
2000, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, 2000. Yeah. And that's the first time I met Chris Faison face to face. We had worked on the book for a year beforehand. Most of it with physical mail, because we were, we're talking the internet 23 years ago or whatever.
Sure.
And we had worked on the book for a year. And the first time I met him was at that Columbus Airport, and I remember it was kind of like a romantic movie where I was coming down the escalator, and there he was waiting for me, and he's been my brother ever since in creating comics. So
That's awesome.
but yeah, that was a fabulous show. I think I did it 3 times altogether.
They were way ahead of the curve in terms of calling it a pop culture con. Like they would have like playmates from the 70s there, and they would have media guests like Lou Ferrigno. Long before the shows became that everywhere. Where apart from Heroes Con, Heroes Con might be the last comic book show of any size that doesn't have media guests at it.
Because I remember at that very first show, the table next to me was the actress that played Lois Lane on the original Superman TV show.
Noelle Neal?
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Very super, very nice. But that's when I became, yes. Okay. Let's talk about this. It's creative. Paul Jenkins.
Writer.
He hasn't done, I haven't seen much from him lately. I think he's not doing any Marvel books anymore, DC.
Could be he's snapped up by video games or something.
Probably. But at that point, he was doing Peter Parker Amazing Spider-Man, or the Peter Parker book, where it's more about Peter Parker than Spider-Man. And it was one of my favorite books. I mean, I just loved it. And again, this is our first... I got so many stories about the first Mid-Ohio Con, but it was all over that Monday. We were taking a shuttle from the airport, or from the hotel to the airport, and it was me, Chris Faison, my partner in the book, and Paul Jenkins, just the 3 of us. And I didn't get a chance to talk about it. I said, hey, Paul, I want to let you know I love your book. It's great. Here's a copy of our book. And I hand him our comic, and he's like, hey, great, thanks. And just the information he told us in that 20-minute drive from the hotel to the airport about the industry and about writing and about working comics, and how he had to fight Marvel, is that the title of the book is Peter Parker. I'm going to do Peter Parker stories, not Spider-Man stories. Stuff like that. Because I think one of the stories is about how Peter Parker went to a Mets game with Uncle Ben. And that was the whole book. And that was one of my favorite Spider-Man stories ever.
Wow. That's great.
I think Spider-Man may, bookend it at the beginning and at the end. But other than that, it's just... So
I think it's funny that logic, that thinking that it's about the person under the mask, that the movies have figured that out.
Yeah.
It's like every opportunity, as soon as the CGI fight, they throw a CGI punch and they land on the ground, the mask dematerializes and you see it's Peter Parker again. It's always about seeing the face of the person and the person under the mask. And
it was, it was really, because that was back, I don't know, were you back a part of the Bendis board days?
I was a little bit. I'm still beholden to comiccon.com, but I definitely popped over on WF Comics, had one for Bendis. They had one for...
Because he called it Jinx World. And
it was Jinx World.
Yeah.
Jinx World, yeah.
And I remember the Bendis board, because Bendis board was a huge supporter of Superhero Happy Hour in the original days.
That's great.
And Bendis was great, because I remember he was at that first Mid-Ohio show that I went to with the book.
He would go every year. Yeah. That was his show. Yeah.
And we were taking the shuttle from, it was, I think, that Friday night where you'd go to the Laughing Ogre comic book store for a party. Sure. And I remember in the shuttle on the way there, Bendis was sitting in the front seat and I'm sitting right behind him. And he turns around and goes, hey, Dan, has Marvel called you yet? And I'm like, no. And he goes, all right, I told him to give you a call. I was like, fuck.
Wow, that's great.
And I will always be grateful for Bendis for that. Nothing ever happened of it. They did call me.
That's
I pitched them a couple quick ideas on the phone, and they didn't like any of them because I made the mistake of pitching Moon Knight like every writer did at that time in my age. But I also wanted to do a Purple Paladin story, but they didn't like that idea either. Because they said, give me a list, give me ideas for the B-listers or C-listers. So I threw out like 5 different ones, and they're like, okay, we'll get back to you. And never heard from them again until their lawyers contacted me about the title superhero. Uh, but yeah, that was my cup of coffee with Marvel Comics.
Wow, that's interesting. So I always found Brian Bendis to be incredibly nice. He was always he's so talented and was so popular and
Mm-hmm.
so hot
Yeah.
in the industry that he didn't have any. There was no need for him to be nice. They talk about you have to be, on time, talented, and nice. At least two. You have to be two of those things to get work. He's all three. He's all three.
I mean,
So
I've for the most part, professionals I met in the comic book industry have always been nice. Um, some of the nicest, most influential creators that I've met through the years, I've mentioned Paul Jenkins, I mentioned Brian Bendis, Mark Waid has always been great to me. That short stint when he was the editor in chief of, where was he at? I can't remember.
everywhere.
Was it CrossGen? He was editor in chief, or
I think he was editor in chief of every company except Image at this point.
or
I think
Boom,
it
or Boom maybe, or something.
was Boom. It was Boom.
Okay, it was
Yeah,
at Boom, and I pitched him ideas. He was open to it. He didn't have to. I mean, he's the editor in chief. He doesn't need to take ideas from me, and it's hard to even pitch unsolicited ideas.
yeah, sure.
But he was great. He was very nice and cool with it. Yeah, Mark Waid. I already said Mark Waid. Peter David was very
Never met
nice.
him.
We that first year when we took our superhero happy hour to Comic-Con San Diego. I'm giving it to. I didn't have a table at that point. I'm just giving it to professionals. Hey, look, Dan Taylor, Chris Faison, we're the new kids on the block. We're coming to get you. And I get here, Mark Waid, or not Mark Waid, Peter David, here, read it. And he goes, here, I'll read it right now. Stay here, because nobody was at his table.
That's funny.
So Chris and I had to stand there in front of him while he read our comic.
Isn't that the most nerve-wracking thing?
Oh, it was.
You're looking at it.
Yeah.
You're looking at every micro expression, like trying to figure out what line of the story he's on based on how his eyebrow is twitch. Oh, he got to the joke.
Yeah, he would chuckle a few times. He pointed out one error we made. It was I think that the term "jip," we didn't use it right or spelled it wrong or something. He gave me the history of the term "jip." But yeah, that was great. So yeah, and I told the story about how Scott Morse did the cover for us, and he was a super nice guy. And so, but going back to my point about New York Comic Con, I'm reading all these new titles coming out, and they're from people I've never heard of before, and which is great. It's a new generation of comic book creators, but I remember a time when I knew everybody, and we all knew each other, and we'd hang out at the Hilton, and oh, so and so's doing this idea. Oh, I'm working here. You've got this book. I've got this book. I'm editing Transformers. So and so's doing this. And I don't know. I kind of felt a little nostalgic about it. A little sad that it's gone on to a new generation or whatever. And great for them. And have fun, kids. Enjoy the comic book industry and make it your own. But it is. I think what I came to terms with is a young person's game, and I just. Nah.
It's interesting. I mean, it's always been a case of a new editor comes in and they bring in all the people they know because they're basically hired to be reliable, and so they're like, okay, who do I know that's reliable? I don't know these other people. Therefore they're not automatically in the reliable column, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they're not acclaimed enough to historically have reliability etched onto their portfolio, onto their into their CV, but they come in and they bring their own people. So it happens all the time. I'm also hearing about like rates in comics being terrible. Like they're not paying what they used to, or worse, they're paying what they used to. So creators who with legendary pedigrees are being brought in and being asked to work for their 1980s rates because comics just aren't selling. No. So the idea that they're bringing in new people now, I hope those new people are being treated well. I hope their contracts are solid. Also, a lot of the older creators all have they're like, I'm not going to work under these conditions. Or what do you mean there's no royalties? There's all these things where, now that you're not just working for Stan or Tom DeFalco or Jim Shooter that you're actually working for the Disney Corporation is, you know, it was always a corporate thing you were working for, somebody's uncle or the big, you know, the parent company, whoever owned Marvel at the time. But now the idea that you're working for Disney and they're telling you that they don't have enough money to pay you, it just doesn't sit well anymore. Like, you just like, really? You don't have enough money? So I don't know. I'm glad I'm not in that world. I was very happy to play with, I did a little work for DC Comics. I was very happy to do that. Very happy to do IDW and Star Trek. I mean, that scratched an itch. I mean, I'm a Shatner approved artist. I'm a Nimoy approved artist, and they're not minting any more of those right now. So those were fantastic. And I'm very glad I did it, but I'm also super glad I have my own property. I'm super glad I have my own thing. And yeah. So how did the superhero, not to digress, I know we're going to get to D&D, but
this is creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. We're covering that, the Muses part for sure. Is with the superhero happy hour. So their lawyers contact you. Are you able to even say a blow by blow of how that went?
Yeah, and if not, who cares?
You're going to hear from their lawyers again.
You can't. Yeah, you can't get blood from a stone, right?
And if the lawyers are watching, thank you for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate.
Please like and subscribe.
Yeah, who knows what other trouble I will get into? No, it was a beautiful, fantastic day. Superhero Happy Hour was I think we had our 4th issue, and it was generating enough excitement to where it required me getting representation.
Mm.
And at the time I lived, in Southern California. So, I talked to various people, and a couple of them said, "Here, you go talk to this guy. This is a good manager agent for you." And so I went up there. I drove up there. It was a 40-minute drive. Office in Santa Monica, maybe. And things didn't turn out great with him later down the line, but right then and there, he's like, "Okay, yeah, I will represent you. I will be your." I think he was going to be my manager, the official, because there's agent, there's manager, then there's people that do both, and then whatever. So it was great. Everything was set up. We got representation. He's going to start talking to Hollywood. Superhero Happy Hour, the comic, or Superhero Happy Hour, the animated TV series, is on its way.
That's
awesome.
Great.
I drive home, and I find a next day Federal Express envelope on my porch.
When you got home?
That day, yeah. I just signed with representation.
Right.
I got home, hours ago. An hour ago. Then I got home. I pick it up, and I look at it, and it says from Marvel/DC.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is fantastic. I'm having the best day of my life. Marvel and DC are contacting me. I didn't, why didn't I think it was weird that both Marvel and DC were contacting me at the same?
Right.
And I just got signed with representation. This is the greatest day of my life. I open it up, rip out the paperwork, cease and desist. I cannot use the term superhero. So I called my new manager. We got a problem.
So did they claim that they had a trademark on the term superhero?
They do. And now I will explain how they have the trademark. In the early 70s, Mego Toy Company, you familiar with their action figures?
Sure.
Had a line of world famous superhero action figures.
Sure.
They got an agreement with Marvel and DC at the time to do both of them. Spider-Man and Superman, whatever. I'm a huge Mego fan. I'm looking at all my new Mego Star Trek figures right now over in that wall over there.
I had the Star Trek ones. I had the Planet of the Apes.
My favorite was Action Jackson, their G.I. Joe guy who
loved it.
So in 71 or 72 maybe, their contract to put out these figures, Marvel and DC together, trademarked the term superhero for Mego to use to sell their action figures.
Wow.
And it's
Wow.
from that.
One. So if there weren't those toys, they probably never would have gone through the hassle of trademarking superhero.
No.
And very interesting. And the idea that two corporations would get together. So and wow. So is it still something they own?
Yep.
Disney and Time Warner, Discovery, HBO, Procter Silex has whatever. Okay.
As far as I know, because every 3 years or so, I guess they pick out somebody who is using the term superhero and file a claim against them.
Make a case against them
in order to protect their trademark.
Wow.
And I was chosen that year, and nobody knew about it that time, and so it was kind of a big kerfuffle. I don't know if you remember when it all went down. And so my agent got me a lawyer, and I went to the lawyer's office, and he represented the Copia like David Lee Roth, David Letterman. I mean, Van Halen. I remember just looking at the gold records on my lawyer's office walls, and he said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do." And at that point, we were taking TV meetings at that point too. Now, so I'd have to go to the meeting, and go, "Okay, we can't call it Superhero Happy Hour," and and on the fly, I thought up Hero Happy Hour. Everybody, the TV execs who I met with that day said, "That's a great idea. Let's run with that. We like the alliteration. It's awesome."
Sure.
And but yeah, so he had to draft a letter, and he worked pro bono for me, because at that point they thought it was going to be a huge TV show.
Right.
That's how much faith that's how we got. I'll tell you how close we got to the TV show, and which is why I'm probably jaded about comics now. But he sent them back a letter saying, "Okay, fine. He will no longer, or Dan and Chris will no longer use the term superhero for their book. Please allow them to sell the remaining stock that they have," which is, a couple long boxes of comics and,
because print runs were like 3,000 minimum back then.
Yeah. And some T-shirts, and then we'll call it Hero Happy Hour after that with issue 5 or issue 4. 5. Issue 5 had was called Hero Happy Hour. And that was it. I never heard from them again.
Oh, wow. Did they never even confirm to the lawyer that's you're fine to sell your back stock?
No, they did. They did.
Okay.
Yeah. They said, "Okay, fine."
Wow. Okay. So it's Hero Happy Hour.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So it was at the precipice of being must-see TV or Saturday morning fare?
I was having meetings, and they're going, "Who do you want to do the voices?" And I'm thinking low bar, because I'm like, well, this is my first show. And I'm no disrespect to who I'm going to announce, but I thought it would be great if like John C. McKinley from Scrubs did one of the voices.
Sure.
Because I love him. And they're like, "No, we want bigger. In fact, we got Pierce Bronson already thinking about it." I'm like, "What the?" Okay.
So they're actually thinking about casting at this point. How far along in the process is this? What is it? Describe to someone who's like, someone's got an idea for their comic, their story. They want to see it on TV. What is, again, might be a huge digression, but what's the first? How do you even find out about this manager to even know? And how does the manager even know that this Dan guy with his comic book is worth spending time with?
Recommendations. I had other comic book creators say, "Go to this guy. I've worked with him before," or "Go to him. He handles this sort of stuff." And he did. And then I handed him all my books, and he saw the potential in it. And this was the downfall of the TV series. So he would set up meetings with these various companies. I had with production companies, and these, I don't know, a half a dozen, 10 maybe meetings with different production companies, all over Hollywood and stuff. And it's weird. I mean, every meeting you go with to meet a production company, it's pretty much the same. "Can we get you some water? Sure, and they come out with a tray of 5 or 6 different brands of bottled water. Okay, I'll take tap's fine with me, but I'll take that. Some meetings were in high, diehard type towers overlooking the valley. Other meetings were on the Warner Brothers studio lot. Other meetings were, beach houses in Santa Monica. It was really weird. And they would just sit around the table and they're like, they blow smoke up your ass saying, "Oh, we love this idea. This idea is so great. It's brilliant. Superheroes in a bar."
And is your manager sitting next to you during these?
Yeah. And he's like, and they're like, "Okay, who did you think of casting?" I don't know. Like, my friend does good voices. No, we're talking Bruce Willis, Seriously, that Bruce Willis was mentioned in one of these meetings. So it's all fine. So we got down to one company where it was a deal, Let's go with this. Oh, God, I totally forgot an element of it. All right, okay, I'll get back to that. Before I got representation, I was going another route with the TV show, animated. So we've got, I think the company Pariah may have been the name of the company. And I remember their offices were on Wilshire Boulevard. They had for me 3 different kinds of water, maybe.
That's how you pick them?
And this was, again...
I'll go with the Fiji Water Company. They seem to know what they're doing.
Avion. Everybody had Avion,
Ugh.
And
What am I, a hobo?
I don't wash my dog in Avion, And so this was the point. This is the time in the world where contracts were faxed back and forth. And they set us up to, and I remember I had to negotiate what my credits would be for the show. Created by Dan Taylor and Chris Faison. I would get an executive producer credit and a story consultation credit.
Okay.
Because every time your name's on a credit, you get royalties for each time your name's on there.
Sure.
A different amount. And I'm like, well, I want to write the scripts. And they're like, Dan, you're not writing the scripts. We're going to get a showrunner. And they're mentioning showrunner names to me. So, well, I still get to say yes or no to stuff. And they're like, well, sure, we'll see, Dan. So anyway, I was going to get paid, I don't know, $640,000.
To split with Faison, or that you...
I don't even remember at this time, but either amount would have been fine.
Yeah, you'd make do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, that was just to sell the show,
Right.
Not to mention what I would make salary-wise for the, the credits and residuals.
Right.
So I'm like, this is great. Where do I sign? And my manager's like, no. Hold off. We're going to negotiate. He had himself down as like executive producer as well as
sure.
making a salary and stuff on it.
Sure. I heard that every manager and every agent wanted to have a producer credit.
Yeah. He wouldn't go down below $1 million for each of us. And we're screaming at him going, this is not even our good idea. This gets us into Hollywood.
Right.
And so the company pulled out. I had pen on paper to sign the contract. And my manager's like, nope, we're going to go for more. Yeah.
That hurts. That hurts.
Yeah. And I burnt some bridges because of that. Because the element I forgot to tell you was here when I lived in LA, there was K-Rock Radio, Kevin and Bean. They were the morning show. They had a talent on there, Ralph Garman. I don't know if you're familiar with Ralph Garman. He does a thing with Kevin Smith, Hollywood Babylon, and all this sort of stuff. Well, he was a big superhero fan, and so I sent him the books, and he's like, "These are great. Let's get together and work on making this into an animated TV show." So that was before representation. And I
Wow.
had to burn my bridge with him to go this route.
Right.
And because he was working with Kevin Smith at the time, and Kevin Smith had just come out with his Clerks cartoon or whatever.
Right. And they were big on they had their website that was,
Poop Shoot.
yeah.
Yeah.
With Chris Ryle, right? Wasn't
Yeah.
he there? And
Yeah. This was a little bit after that. Because Chris Ryle was, I just almost about, yeah, this is a point where Chris Ryle was going on to IDW.
Mhm.
Because he brought me on to IDW because of Superhero Happy Hour.
and Chris was just picked up by another company, wasn't he?
Yeah.
It was at that news this week.
He's a consultant.
Gotcha. For Aftershock?
Yeah. I
Gotcha.
think so. So anyway, that was my run-in with Hollywood. Okay, I had a couple meetings about other properties that my manager set up, but they didn't go anywhere. That was the closest I ever got to having my own TV show, and it would have been amazing. I think I would have made like $10,000 an episode minimum,
Right.
after the $640,000. But it would have gotten me in.
Right.
I did not count on this to be the end all be all. I mean,
And it was just a different time because like you're talking about 2000 and then 2001 happens and then all the belts tighten, all the purses close. And like, people were still flush with .com money at that time. And so people were spending a lot of money. And nowadays it's like the whole idea that, to me, I look at comics, I think, why has there never been like an Astounding Space Thrills? I did talk with someone back in the day about it, like an Astounding Space Thrills TV show. And but it was always like, well, if they haven't made a Bone cartoon yet, why would they make mine? If they haven't made a Usagi Yojimbo cartoon, why would they make mine? I mean, I'm glad they have one, a Usagi one now, but it seems like in terms of the order in which things, and I know that's illogical because, things could just come in out of nowhere. There could be a Tick TV show. There can be these things just happen. And so I totally get that. Why isn't there a Scud the Disposable Assassin TV show,
Mm-hmm.
given that Rob Schraub is in Hollywood all the time? And anyway, it's baffling. It's heartbreaking. There's just so many heartbreaking stories about people who are so close to grabbing that brass ring, or the people who get this stuff into production, I guess, like Jeff Smith. Oh no, David Peterson, for goodness sake. The whole idea that they've spent millions to make the movie. Disney buys Fox and they go, we already have a mouse, essentially. It's awful.
It's and that's one thing with comic creators, even the last 2 decades, is everybody just wants to do a 6-issue comic book series to sell the rights.
Right.
For
So
the
there's a
movie
ton of
or
properties out there and
TV
all of it
show. Yeah.
fighting for the same $1 million deal.
Yeah. So I went through it, and then, that was all fine. And just recently, something I wrote for IDW that never saw the light of day was called Darlings of America. And it was pretty much a murder cover-up story focused on not these actual people, but people based on Paris Hilton, Britney Spears, and what was the one that thought that Chicken of the Sea? She played Daisy Duke in the movie with Knoxville. I can't remember her name.
Oh,
She was a singer.
Jessica Simpson?
Yeah, Jessica Simpson. It was based on a murder mystery type of thing. With that, the Anna Nicole Smith character was murdered, and because at that point I was working for IDW, I was taking these 2-hour commutes to work and back, and all that. They just talked about those girls on the radio news all the time.
Mm.
So I had this idea. I pitched it to Neil Clyde. Neil Clyde and I wrote a 5-issue book on it, a series, and IDW bought it from us, and they were going to make it. And then all of a sudden they decided before the first issue came out, the artist had half of the first issue drawn. They said, we're not going to do it.
Huh.
But they paid us for the whole series, So we're like, okay. And then just 2 years ago, not even maybe, a year and a half ago or so, IDW calls up and says, oh, we still have this property of yours. We want to make it into a TV streaming series. You guys interested? And we're like,
That's great.
okay. And then they said, okay, well, here's, $3,000 pay or play, for each of you, you know, bought me my new computer, which I'm using to stream now. And then there was a higher up change at IDW. New president took over because, at this point, Ted Adams has been gone forever.
Sure, sure.
And Chris was out. He hasn't been there. So there's a change of head, and then they call us and say, "Oh, new person's in charge, new president. Your series is out. Thanks a lot. Bye."
Amazing.
Yeah, it was. I can't believe it. So
there was a weird message I got from someone from IDW because they published the Astounding Space Thrills collection in 2008.
Yeah,
for the trade, and they contacted me and said, is this currently represented by anybody? Because they basically got representation rights back in 2008, but it's not like they've upped it again. And they contacted, oh yeah, I was like, go ahead.
Yeah.
Like, what do I know? Again, to me, it's just their books that I sell. I get my Patreon out there. That's all I care about. And nothing ever came of it. So I don't know. It's great to have these properties. It's great to have them out there. It's another reason why creators shouldn't be, another reason why to just create as many things as possible. Do you feel so? The Hero Happy Hour story, how many issues did you have out there?
But when I had to change it?
No, in total. How many issues? If people are hunting issues down, how many are out there?
There are 5. There are 4 superhero happy hours, 1 hero happy hour, a superhero happy hour collection where I got other talents to come in and do short stories based about characters in the bar or new characters that they could put in that bar, which was such a fun project that I put together. And nobody knew me, but I knew enough people. This is, just getting into the thing that had, was fun. I had Steve Niles and Ben Templesmith do a story for me. I had Todd Nuck do a story. He put his Wildstar characters,
wow,
in it. Yeah, so they're Hero Happy Hour canon. So I had that book, and then after that, Chris and I tried the webcomic route with it and just couldn't keep up and couldn't figure it out.
Sure.
Kudos to you for finding the magic, way to do it, but we couldn't figure out how to keep it up going. So I did like a couple stories there. And then at IDW, I did publish 1 Hero Happy Hour book under the IDW umbrella called the Super Deluxe Hero Happy Hour, because I threw deluxe in between super and hero.
Well played.
And it was a 64-page comic. But they didn't. I don't know. I have issues with that. It didn't go well. But it was a great story. It was, I killed off.
It didn't go well. You weren't happy with sales.
They weren't happy with sales. They overcharged for it. It was because we did our traditional black and white book, and it was like they put a $10 price tag on it.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it like a DVD because we had extra deleted scenes that we put in it. We had bloopers.
That's great.
So it's just 1-page comic, and you could see where the scene was from the book, but then they'd we wrote those in. So it was a fun book. And then I think we've had 2 or just 1. No, we did 2 Superhero Happy Hour Kickstarters. We did 1 full 100 or 86 page or 90. I don't know. We did 1 trade paper, all original, not collection, color story, our only color book we've done. And that was called Hero Happy Hour on the Rocks. And then we did I know on the webcomic we did one where the lawyers show up to try to shut him down. And then we did, we were poked fun at North Korea, and we did Hero Happy Hour versus the Supreme Leader. And that was the last book we did. So I don't know.
You were talking about doing an omnibus, weren't you?
Well, I've done a few. The first four are collected in a trade. Then I did a couple other little ones. But what we're going to do is next year, hopefully, we were going to do it for this year, but things got complicated. Next year, we're going to do a 21st anniversary. Hey, it can drink now book, where we're going to take the very first issue that was 40 pages because we didn't know how to do comics at that time. We didn't know they're supposed to be 22 pages with 10 pages of ads. We're going to take that first issue and redo it. I'm going to tighten up the writing, punch up the jokes.
That's awesome.
Chris is going to do his art now that he's 20 years better at doing art. We've got it started.
That's great.
So we're going to just put out number 1 out again, but totally redone.
That's wild.
We figure that's an easy, fun way to do it,
Yeah, it's wild. It's also one of those things where it's like I would love to redraw those Star Trek books I did. Mm-hmm. Being 12 years better. And, I feel like there's things like, there's no reason to justify, because you can always go back and redo your stuff. I tell web cartoonists all the time, thinking about going back and redoing. And, I say that, that way lies madness, because you're never going to be happy. You're always going to keep getting better. Hopefully you're going to keep getting better and always hating the thing you did 3 days ago, because now that you have the experience of having created it, you're 3 days better than you were then. Is always going to be this cycle. But the idea of going back and looking at something from so long ago, something that is such a different chapter of your life, and approaching it with, veteran eyes.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. Because I know how to format it better. I know, because I just handed him, because originally and sorry, folks, there's no D&D in this talk. We're just talking about comic books.
We'll squeeze in D&D at the end.
So Chris, I saw his ad on Digital Webbing saying he wants to do a comic book. Is any writers out there want to do it? And so I sent him Superhero Happy Hour. Originally was going to be a short film. So I just sent him the screenplay that I wrote for the short film. And he broke down the pages from that.
Gotcha.
And he had never done a book before. So that's why it's so weirdly formatted, probably. So now that I've written plenty more comic books, I have edited countless amount of comic books with IDW. I'm a better comic book creator now, even though I don't like creating comic books anymore. So, but it'll be fun to revisit. And I do love those characters so much. Because we just thought it was going to be a one shot. Here, we did a book.
Right.
Check that off our bucket list. And it did become such a part of my life. And
you're gonna kickstart this retelling?
Nope. I'm not going to kickstart because I don't want to go through the hassles of a Kickstarter.
I get that.
So here's the plan. We are going to offer it on our just website for sale as a print-on-demand book. And I am going to maybe offer it as print-on-demand in different avenues, like, on our website, maybe Amazon, maybe
Indie Planet, all those ones.
Yeah, but a different cover for each one. So, and then if some comic book store wants to do a 20 print run, because print on demand is cheap enough now where we're not going to make a fortune, and it's going to be a black and white book again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just like it was back in the day.
Sure.
It's more of a thank you to the people who bought our book 21 years ago.
That's awesome.
To look at it again. Because, honestly, I just don't, Kickstarters are so exhausting.
I get that. They are exhausting.
So it's, yeah. And
to me, I just find them magical in terms of backstock. Like if I do an AST collection, Astounding Space Thrills collection, I have all these back issues and they're basically bagged and boarded and sitting in a closet. And I'm like, if they're not worth taking to a convention to explain why a portion of my table is like most of my table is fantasy. And here's a portion of it that's sci-fi. And why is it sci-fi? And it's my work from 25 years ago, which only in the context of a Kickstarter can I move that stuff. I can post it on eBay, and sell it that way. But in a Kickstarter, those things, the value of them is actually recognized. So I would imagine you'd be able to move back stock if you had any.
Yeah, see, I am at that point now where I don't have that much back stock.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I've got one short box left of of Hero Happy Hour comics, if that. And I don't even have some of the issues, you know.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's my comic book rise from rags to riches to rags.
All right. So we had 3/4 of an hour talking about comics, but the first 3 minutes don't count since we were muted.
Yeah.
But so with the remaining quarter, let's talk about the exciting news this week that there's going to be a new streaming program.
There is. We showed the trailer off last week, and Catacombs and Comedians, Wrath of the Aristocrats. And we're going to premiere Wednesday, 8 o'clock Central. I guess that's 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific. This Wednesday, the 12th. Fingers crossed.
Here on Twitch, on this channel.
Here on Twitch, on this channel. I will at least be here to explain why it went wrong if it's if it's not here. But yeah, I've got to corral these 4 comedians together and try to get them all on their computers at the same time with their characters ready. Make sure that they've got microphones and lighting, and
have you play tested? Have had a chance to get all these cats herded yet? Ooh, this is.
Well, we did one group meeting, but it was like on their phone in their car, So I haven't seen how they're going to set up. I put out the email again yesterday saying, "Okay, people, boom, 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 get this all done. Contact me anytime between now and then to run through things if you have any questions." So it's going to be a horrible, horrible experience this Wednesday.
So is the idea that you're going to go live 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock East Coast time on Wednesday here on Twitch? Does that mean half an hour beforehand, 45 minutes beforehand, a whole hour beforehand? You're just going to be welcoming them in and checking sound and doing all that stuff?
Yes, exactly. I told them to log in at least by 7 our time.
Well, we know you've got your title credits. That will buy you another minute or so before you.
And then, I don't know how much of it's going to be a session 0. Because, we're going to introduce each other, figure out what their characters are. So I don't know if any dice will actually be dropped this Wednesday. It might just be me introducing them to the world and them introducing their characters and how things are going to go. So yeah, it's going to be a train wreck that I invite everybody to come watch.
That's great.
But yeah, and then the following Wednesday is my show in Huntsville with the Huntsville crew, and that's our side-splitting spooktacular, which we got to hurry up and get these shows on the way because I came up with another giveaway for this show. Okay, I've already got these stickers.
Fantastic.
Ooh. But we're going to have a giveaway. And it's a trading card. And this will be a creature. I don't know if you can see it on anything that you have there on your end, Steve. It's a monster called the Side Splitter.
I saw that on Twitter, but you have it on the screen right now?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I've got Steve Musgrave's artwork on the front, and then I've got kind of a mini monster block on the back.
That's great.
And it's going to be trading card size. It's not all the information because obviously I couldn't fit it all on there.
It is a bear to fit stats onto a card.
Yeah.
You don't want to make it Magic the Gathering size where you need like a jeweler's loop to read the art credit. Forget that.
So this is going to be an ongoing thing at all Catacombs and Comedian shows. I'm going to have
who's your vendor for the cards?
A new trading card.
And who's your vendor for the cards?
Where am I printing them?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Okay. I was looking for there's a Comics Wellspring was one I was recommended. I'm printing cards through them. I don't remember who you.
Not them. It's another company I found that was half the price of every other card printing company.
All right, I'll have to pester you about that.
So I jumped on them. It's like US Print or something. It's like,
okay.
Yeah. I jumped on that. I mean, literally half the price.
Wow. That's great. How many are you making?
250 of this 500 of this first run.
That's great.
And it's costing me maybe $30.
Dude.
Yeah.
All right. I have to get that link. I have to get that information from you. I will be pestering you later today.
That's what and then if I didn't have to, it takes them a while to print them. And if I didn't have to pay for rush shipping, it'd be real cheap, but I'm paying like another $30 to get them here in time for the first show. Cause I thought of this idea too late, but still,
it's a great idea.
$60 for 500 cards.
That's great.
But now that I know it, and I figure that's, again, one way, hopefully. And then this will be an extra bonus that I'm going to throw in these cards to everyone who got physical, of the Kickstarter of the Oddity off print.
That's great.
And they don't even know it yet. I have them, so I'm going to throw them in because, because I'm running about 2 weeks late on the off print, getting the physical stuff out. So,
gotcha.
So I figure I'll just throw that in there. But yeah, that'll be an ongoing thing. And then I have the Spooktacular show the 24th. So, and then of course, so I've got my streaming show the 12th, and then the 13th I got to go see this other Dungeons and Dragons show in Nashville.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, and then I've got Jane's Addiction on the 10th. I've got Violent Femmes on the 26th.
Oh, the butterfly. It's fantastic.
So yeah, my wife and kid are out of town for this week, starting Tuesday for a week. So I'm going to get everything done and ready for the show. So again, I plan to launch the stream while they're gone. So if I burn the house down, I won't lose them while I do it. Tell me your life right now is a little less hectic, other than recovering from a storm.
Yeah. I mean, it's set me. The storms definitely set me back about at least a week in terms of putting together the Intoximancy book. I wanted the PDF out in September. I did send out a preview of the subclass. I shared that with my backers and on Discord, and the response was very kind. People seem to like it. I thought I would get a ton of notes of well, actually, a lot of that stuff of just my math didn't add up, or, there's a typo. There were actually quite a few nice, hey, there's a typo here. I'm like, I love that stuff. I'd much rather get it caught now than later. The plan is to deliver the PDF to everybody and then basically wait a week before I send it to the printer. So the book won't be ready in time for the Baltimore Comic-Con, which was my hope. But again, storm came in and wrecked everything. I had to ship out some orders this week, and it was just this. Okay, I've got the books I'm mailing out in this room. I've got the boxes in the bedroom. I've got the wrap. I've got the bubble wrap in the living room. It's like I'm doing laps to pack up one box, and then okay, that's done. I have to do another lap. It's so disorganized right now. But I did also set up the backer kit this week and sent out my backer kit surveys for Intoximancy.
Got mine.
And brought in, another bit of support for people who are adding the STL file or adding, and also some original. I did start running a Facebook ad. It's not as effective pointing to backer kit as it was pointing to the Kickstarter, but it is somewhat effective. So we'll see. I'm hoping that it brings in a few more orders through backer kit.
Yeah, I'm worried about not worried. I'm anxious about my numbers for the show next Wednesday, the 19th. And I don't know.
Did they tell you the numbers ahead of time?
If I ask for them. But it's kind of the thing I'm afraid to ask. Oh, you sold 4. Oh, okay, great.
What is there a number that you hope for? I mean, you hope for a full house, but is there is it basically you want 10 more than the last show? Is it that sort of thing?
The very first show had 80 sold tickets before, I think, which was amazing. They tell me for the night and a new act and that sort of stuff. We've been averaging about 60 tickets a show.
Gotcha.
Then there's, but the overall crowd's been about 100, 120 for each show.
So that number represents pre-sales.
The 6, yeah. Then
Gotcha.
There's walk up, and then there's comps, a lot of comps. Because the clubs themselves aren't making any money off ticket sales. They make all their money off of
food and alcohol.
Food and beverage, yeah. So
That's interesting.
that's why they'll go ahead. I don't authorize any of the comps. They just
Gotcha. So the pre-sales is really the part that you get to that really represents your paycheck for the thing.
most of it, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm making. I don't know if I'm at liberty to say how much I make, but I make a good portion of the door.
Well, that's good too. Okay, I didn't know that was also part of it. That's great.
But I also split it with all my talent.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, the club doesn't pay me any additional fee. They just pay me a portion of the door.
Right.
So,
That's interesting. Yeah, Phil, fingers crossed. And I hope the other show that you're going to check out, the one that has your cast member in it.
Yeah.
I hope they have a fine one evening and they go, okay, let's, in true D&D fashion, find it very difficult to get the group back together again to finish the.
Yeah. Well, they've already got the next 4 weeks planned because they're going to
Gotcha.
do it weekly, and my club won't. Because talent like Kyle Kinane and Marlon Waynes Jr. need to come in and use my stage. So
They don't want to. They can sit in.
yeah, they're not up for that, I guess.
No. Well, I hope the show goes great. I'm really excited for Wednesday. I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's all.
Well, I'm glad I got one viewer. But yeah, I think we'll have more D&D next week. But let this be a cautionary tale to you creators out there.
Oh, about Hollywood and managers and all
Yeah.
that. And just take whatever deal they offer you, for goodness sake.
Remember, the idea that gets you in the door is not your good idea. You've got a better idea. That's what I tell people. That's my advice to new creators.
I think to me, it's more like I just want the paycheck, because my presumption is they're going to ruin it. They're going to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen it. They're going to, they're going to Howard the Duck it. I feel like they're going to make it terrible. They're going to do a version that's going to upset the fans. And, so just give me a paycheck and, let me be flown in as a guest to a few conventions because he's the creator of this new TV show. There's got to be other ways to capitalize on it other than hoping that anybody even remotely understands the projects we've created. I feel like if someone was going to try to adapt my comics, they wouldn't get what I was doing with it. I just presume they'll understand the trappings, but it's like the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power. There's going to be like, okay, we want elves. We want hot elves. That's our first primary ingredient. And everything else is, oh yeah, maybe we can include some of the stuff that the guy wrote, but primarily hot elves.
Yeah, well, that's not a bad start.
No, it's very, it'll get viewers, but I don't know if it's it's not really, it's not like they're beholden to the material. It's not a sacred text.
No,
to them.
Yeah, the bigger the paycheck, the less I'll worry about how they ruin it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a very fair. I appreciate that formula.
There's a Venn diagram somewhere.
The more you're paid, the less I care.
Yeah. All right, Steve, I'm out of coffee.
All right.
I'll talk to you next Sunday.
You'll talk to me before then. I want that printer now. I want that name of that printer.
Okay.
The card.
All right. Yes. Send me a thing, and that'll remind me to send it to you.
And I'm absolutely be sure to pester you during the live show on Wednesday.
Oh, please do. And then, like I said, codename Pulsar should be arriving probably Monday.
You're awesome.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks. Bye.